If religion is where people get their sense of fulfillment, it should be something they think is achievable. They can see the impact directly rather than something as abstract and blurry as spiritual level in their side. There's 2 points of setup then. Firstly, what does the religious teaching under our self-doubts actually look like? It means that these teaching will teach its followers to focus more on things that are more external and worldly. For example, materialistic gains like being successful, relationship. But note that it does not stop there as to the extent of, the core of religions to exist on our house. So sure, it means that they're going to be try to be as successful as possible, but it means when they get the money, they're going to do altruistic deeds. When they opt into a relationship, it does not stop there. It also means that they're going to be nicer to their husband, to their wife. That's it. And secondly, it also does not mean that we don't do internal, like spiritual related things, just less focus on it. This is justified because the effort and time we argued to do, like for example, praying with yourself is also lesser anyway, so it's fine for us to not focus on it as much. And secondly, how is this narrative actually spread under our subject house? It means that most likely spread using doctrine or teaching, usually by religious leader, that to get salvation and fulfillment, you need to interact with other people and not be individualistic. For example, under proposition, the religious believe are more communally like focused, so they tend to agree to some communal values that have been set in the Bible, for example, or other teaching. Yeah, in opposition, they need to defend a few things. That maybe there's going to be different interpretation of people, but secondly, what happens if there's less communal value in their side? For example, no people actually get incentivized to go to church. They think they can do it in their home, and they don't interact with a lot of people at the very worst case. But I'm going to bring two arguments then. Firstly, on why this religious teaching is much more suitable to the current characterization of status quo. I'm going to link this back to the idea of individual fulfillment. But secondly, on a bit on the practical impact on how it builds a much stronger religious community, and I'm going to prove to you why that's both important and only exclusive in that proposition. Firstly, on why this suit the characterization of status quo. But before anything, notice that this is really important for religious teaching to be as applicable to the people in their real life, because if the world is progressing right now, a lot of globalization is happening and people go out and hustle, but religion instead under their sub house tell people to go inside of the house and just pray and do internal meditation. It is a high likelihood that people in their sub house would not even have the belief, would not even have the idea, they don't even feel the incentive to do it, because again, yeah, there's a lot of clashing value, like they need to go to work, but also they need to do something like internal education. But three things are this then. We argue that in this world, under both sides of the house, you need to work, you need to go outside, you need to communicate. The problem in status quo is that people often get tired, they don't get fulfillment from doing this type of thing, right? Especially, for example, if these are extremely religious people, they think it's extremely hard for them to get fulfillment through their daily life because they need to sacrifice their time to go to church, for example. We fix this under our side of the house because we tell them it's fine. We validate them, right? If you focus on those things and you go to work to get money, it is fine. It's normal. It's just, it reassures people to like the religious community acknowledge what they're doing is justified. But then secondly, we let them know that they can actually get fulfillment both ways. We teach them to balance the greed and ego that they have in receiving and trying to get and be as rich as possible with the idea of leaving some money to help the poor. So it's kind of balanced under our house. But the second thing under this is that other than internal human incentive to be rich, this is also caused by a lot of society pressure, for example, because I don't think this debate takes place in a really specific context of, like, let's say Amish American or maybe black theologists that is extremely isolated. So it is a more general context, like in the status quo in Indonesia and USA, etc., where there's expectation from people and the societal pressure to be successful in the constant competition that exists in the capitalistic society that exists on the both sides of the house. So yes, at best you get high spiritual level in their side of the house, which again I don't know what is the metric of high spiritual level, like we're playing game or something, but you feel less fulfillment in their side of the house no matter how high it is, because there is this one thing that you need to sacrifice, either your money or your time to meditate, right? When individuals need to choose on their side of the house, not only first are they extremely confused on which one to deprioritize, it also means that they don't get fulfilled when doing either of them, because there's a constant feeling of guilt that, if I go to work right now, I'm sacrificing my time to interact, to talk to my gut, for example. But if I go and do some self-meditation, I also need to go to work to fulfill my, feed my family, for example. On their side of the house, the society tell me to do one thing, but the religion tell them to do other thing. It makes them confused. There's constant guilt on their side of the house. But then secondly, my DPM will later extend on this, but I'm going to talk about it just a bit. Is that spiritual level is really hard to teach us, to achieve, because the idea of it is completely blurry. In proposition, it's just much more feasible. It's something like, you give money to the poor, you can immediately see the smile of these people. The manifestation in proposition is two things. Individual feel more fulfilled when doing whatever they're doing. There's less guilt on the other side of the house. Individual can be more productive instead of wasting a lot of their time thinking about, I should just do this instead of doing this. So you also see the impact directly on the other side of the house, like we told you. If you help someone, you can immediately see that they're smiling, you think that they appreciate what you're doing, you get fulfillment also. So even if in the worst case scenario that these people does not believe in the idea of afterlife, for example, they don't believe in heaven, it's fine because they can already get fulfillment right now. They can see that people are actually saying thank you to them, for example. But then secondly, it's also more accessible to general public, because for most people, again, it is hard to imagine the idea and the link between you meditating, talking to your God, and just going to heaven, especially because there's a lot of clashing ideology. For example, atheists telling you that God is not real. So under our side of the house, we say, just by you helping the Palestinian people, for example, you get chance to go to heaven, or at least you get those fulfillment that, you cannot otherwise get inside opposition. But before I move on, any point? The second argument then, I'm going to extend to you how it builds a stronger religious community. Notice that my first argument already talks about individual level, so in principle, we already won by a huge margin. But then secondly, I'm going to focus on how it builds basically that. There's three things out of this. A is that in proposition, we tell the people the importance of community and your relationship with other really is in this world. This means that individual devote more time to community building interaction. I think this is really important because the idea of community is that you get people who understand you get people who's going to be there when you're sad, you get people who's going to be there when you're happy, so that they celebrate with you, for example. It gives a feeling of validation when you're successful, but it also means that they're going to basically be there when you're sad again. And secondly, again, community is built on like one single communal value that everyone is agreed upon. You're less likely to be alienated on our side of the house. Sam again is going to extend on that. How on their side of the house, people will most likely feel alienated because of the different interpretation of it. But then lastly, people are also more selfless, right? People contribute to the community on our side of the house. We think this is okay because if other people also have the same communal value with you, then it's fine if you contribute to them. They're also going to contribute back to you. But if in the very worst case scenario that for some reason they're going to take the extreme burden towards us and say that people are going to irrationally sacrifice, I think it's fine because at the end of the day, they think that is something noble. They think that is something that is fulfilling for them. I think that's fine. But then secondly, is that strong religious community is important from general perspective. Because from the public perspective, they're more likely to opt into this sort of religion because it's more tangible. It is something that they can see directly the impact of it. Where, like, for example, what this religion is proposing is something that you can easily do as a general human. You don't need to really understand the idea of like karma or something that is really, really blurry for a lot of people. It is simply achievable on our side. But secondly, furthermore, it's also about how when they see that your community is strong and tightly integrated, there's also one like idea of marketing that people will opt into. This means that you get more people buying into your religion. On the other side of the house, you get more people opting into religion. And since this is a religion debate, I think that's just one thing that both sides want to achieve. But then lastly, on exclusivity. Why is this exclusive on the other side of the house on strong like religious community? Because in opposition instead is that religious teaching tells them that, you can still get salvation even if you do everything by yourself. You have no incentive to opt into these sort of long-term communities, right? You choose to use those time for yourself. Sure, I'm not going to take the extreme worst case and say that on their side of the house, they're not going to literally interact with every single person. They're not going to go to work, they're not going to talk to the colleagues, but you think that those are a waste of time. You don't think it's something that you want to do in the long term. You don't have the incentive to even build on that community. So if something bad happened to that community, you don't even feel the need to rebuild it together. But then secondly, I would also argue that on the way of worst case scenario, we prevent it better, right? For example, if individuals are faced with things that are really, really bad for them, like maybe they go into bankruptcy, at least community is there to help them. Maybe they can do donation, maybe they can do like GoFundMe or whatever that is. And there's of the house, because you don't even have the incentive to meet other people, then it's also really hard for you to stand on your own. For all those reasons proposed.
Thank you, first Prof, for those 5 remarks. I'll invite first up.
Wait, do we have any timer? Because we didn't bring our own personal timer. Okay. Am I audible to everyone? Sure. The World in Proposition Lives On is a world where religious is just a podcast of motivational led by Andrew Tate. They indoctrinate us on certain framings which is significantly untrue. They tell you that religions actively indoctrinate people to stay in their houses, for example. That is the very extreme case that extremely won't happen under opposition. We can assure you that. But 2 framings then. Firstly, what does it mean to be actively encouraging people to focus on this internal spirit? No, it wouldn't look like making them stay in their houses, for example, or praying 24/7. It would look like teaching them that God has your back, for example, that you can lean on this value, that you can hope that God has your back, that everything you do is massively controlled and massively helped by your God, for example. That is exactly what it means to be internal spirited. But secondly, what does it mean then to be about material gains? Materialistic gains would probably mean about wanting to ever make everything you do into having a material situation, that whether it would mean from physical contact to anything that happens within materialistic affirmation affirmations, right? It would mean that you individuals would probably actively focus on indulging on all of this, meaning that they would need a representation, they would need a certain action of motive for them to believe that God is true, for example. But thirdly, let's very note the prerequisite that human nature is especially nasty. It is the fact that religions and actually communal deprivate this on this fact is that where humans change, for example. The tipping point of humanity, for example, is when people know and understand the value of the Bible, for example, is when people understand certain motives happening in religions. This is why individuals change to begin with. It's why it is necessarily important for us as a religion to importanize this. The two rebuttals then, since what do we hear then from PM's speech? Read that firstly, the people will be jobless or whatever. That is very extreme. But only first, that's not going to happen. No religion ever tells you to stay in your house, to never communicate with anyone, to never get a job. That is extremely irresponsible of PM to frame you that. But let's note that within this case, it's not going to happen. We have community groups, for example, between churches. We force you to actually interact with other individuals, for example, between church communities. We have this type of interaction happening between individuals under our side of the house. But secondly, let's engage then on the worst case, even though this probably won't still happen. Firstly, then what will happen is the very least, if this happens, if you probably end up jobless or actually indulging of all of your sinnery, you know that your God would help you through more of your sin because you now have faith, you now have this certain link back to your religion. Now you understand the prerequisite that is not between materialistic gains, but also with internal spiritual gains, which you can get is extremely accessible. But second then, we know that they are talking about fulfillment and everything, about saying thank you, just doing things under this fact. Firstly, let's not let's say that individuals are not going to be alienated on our side of the house. We have all of the churches, we have all of the communication still happening. But why then we still get fulfillment? The parameter for you to be successful under religious communities is very simple. You don't have to be extremely beautiful. You don't have to be extremely smart to a certain extent. You just have to believe in your God, for example. We say the sense of fulfillment will probably be done better under our side of the house because now you guarantee that you don't have to have this affirmative materialistic to be listened to. You now are not comparing yourself to individuals who have better starting points for you, for example, because you know that your God will probably help you into this certain motive. Fulfillment then will be better then under opposition because note that first, you still have that fulfillment in a sense. You still understand the Bible, for example. You still get that fulfillment. You still get internal spiritual change. That will still exist under opposition. But secondly then, why does the individuals will have better fulfillment? Let's note that people probably will get a bigger ego under their side of the house, which then I will explain to you in my argument. Firstly, then, on why this is principally justified. Two incentives. Firstly, let's say that the biggest religious community's incentive is to A, gain followers, to change and influence, and indirectly define people's heads, for example, to characterize their immorality, for example. But how then you get this? Firstly, through convincing and connecting to one another. This is a very special, important prerequisite that happens under opposition, because then you don't need to have a successful job or a better parameter of success, for example, to succeed in this religion, for example, which is exactly what happens under proposition. Note that your true convincing and connecting is very simple. All you probably have to do is connect emotionally to the situation. You don't need to understand beyond that capacity. You just have to relate to one another, and you just have to involve in that spiritualization. But secondly, why is this important then? Note that you have a volatile life. People's life is not going to be inherently the same or inherently successful, 100% better or whatever. You're probably going to have bad tipping points too. You're probably going to have bad days, for example. This is why it's so important. Let's look at individuals who are probably ranked down from all of their religious teachings, for example, when they give up in a certain situation. But how then do we proceed to have a sufficient ending on our side? Firstly, when we imply and actively focus between these narratives, humans will probably want less more. They have less expectations during this part, but they still link back on you. Then let's note that when you have a volatile life, you're most likely to give up. So what will then happen on our proposition when people don't get what they want, for example, when all you do is pray and get no manifestation afterwards? Firstly, they probably give up in a sense because their ego is so big, right? You probably want to get that in a certain situation. They probably opt out into another religion with better benefits than you because you can make a significant materialistic gain under their side. Yes.
We told you that quote unquote believing in God is just not that easy for everyone to do because A, you're busy doing other things. Secondly, there are a lot of people proving you wrong because of science. Thirdly, internally, if you pray and you don't see the result directly, you start to doubt in God.
Exactly. When you don't get anything incentive, like in the facing when you pray to God, for example, the people lose their hope. Thank you. But secondly, then, let's say the human ego will probably be bad under proposition. Firstly, now they probably undermine God's blessing because right now they can't contemplate on the bigger part that God has actually given this to them, but they probably think more about all of their executions during their part. They probably think more about their progress between that situation. They probably won't rely on God in their way because they still get the affirmative actions that they have. But secondly, let's note that you probably would stop contributing to all of the churches, for example, or all of your prerequisites for religion itself. People would just then leave their religion or opt out to other religions because they can get better benefit, for example, outside. But thirdly, how do you lose every hope under a proposition then? Firstly, you're probably most likely to blame God, likely because of your worries. Comparatively, you're mostly having to go through bad days without any intentions of hope. You're probably still going to get unfulfilled. But true impacts then, firstly, under hope. Let's note that this is extremely stronger under our side of the house. Individuals would then still want to actually contribute to life because note that they have individualistic needs too. Being religious doesn't mean that you're suddenly an angel, for example, who doesn't want any materialistic things to happen on your side. I would probably still want good grades, for example, even though I pray to God. I would probably still want to win this debate, even though I believe in God, for example. The parameter of individuals being counterproductive is just inherently unanalyzed under a proposition. But secondly, note that happiness will be better under our side of the house. Firstly, note that the parameter of happiness, exactly like what I said to you, it's very small under these religious communities. You don't need to be sustainably pretty, handsome, or whatever. You don't need to be successful, which is exactly what individuals will probably reach under proposition. You won't be defined in the successful parameter of your religion. You probably won't depend on faith onto how you will probably imply on this fact. You probably don't have a factor to contribute into that situation. You probably will still faithfully believe on God because of the internal spirit that you have that these doctrinations have probably fed you. This is inherently perfect for opposition to say that individuals probably will have better incentives under our side of the house. But secondly then, what is the comparative here? Firstly, people probably will still have good intentions under our side. It is the fact that they have bigger and larger hope that will then sustainably cater then we have better sides on our side of the house. Team Galtim must go past this round.
Thank you first off for that fine speech. Now I welcome the seventh prop here.
Trigger warning before I start my speech because this motion is about religion, so yeah, do not take this out of context, and this is only used for the purpose of this debate only. Our case can also work for the rich and for the poor. Rich people can donate to churches, donate to other organizations, and the poor can also get the benefit, right? They can be donated by the rich, for example, or they can also just help other people because they want more better relationship. That is still within our side. So yeah, our case can still run. But secondly, we do not need to focus on like self-spiritual because you only need to take a little time to pray, right? You only need a little time to pray to God and to so that God can bless you for tomorrow. But thirdly, their case is so extreme. How can suddenly we blame God if if we're not successful? We told you that we're actually pushing people so that they can gain those materialistic value. We tell you that we push people to become a better person, to get more relationship with other people, and so they can treat other people even better. But yeah, thirdly, how does beauty standard suddenly come into the debate? I do not understand. There's no correlation to this debate. First clash then on why it suits the status quo. We told you that firstly then we want people to get validation for what they're doing in status quo because the world is so capitalistic, the world is so materialistic. You need a validation when you do something. The comparison here is that in opposition side, when you do these capitalistic things, you're not validated by your own religion, right? There is no validation coming from them. You're only told to memorize the whole Bible, for example, or you need to be with your community every day in the church, for example.
example, right? But secondly, we told you that it's also important because there's societal pressure where everyone wants you to compete with each other. You cannot just run away from a capitalistic world. You do not live in a new world. Thirdly, comparison. Then in opposition side, people will get less fulfillment because they need to choose either they want to be realistic, they want to be materialistic, or they want to be religious. They cannot take both paths because even if they take both paths, it will lead to less fulfillment because they cannot max out the both of them. What do they respond you with? Firstly, they told you that people will not stay at home because they have community. They need to go outside. But let's clarify this first. What my P1 told you is that when people are taught to like memorize the Bible or only focus on your spiritual level, they'll not have as much incentive to go out and be more productive, right? But secondly, they also tell you that you can also rely on God. So let's flip this then. Firstly, the simple reason of you relying on God means that you're going to be unproductive because you now are going to rely on God that suddenly tomorrow when you wake up, you'll get $1 billion beside you. But secondly, we also told you that by believing in God, in something that is so abstract, you cannot even imagine it, you'll just feel confused. And thirdly, if you get problem, you'll just blame your religion because they never teach you how to be realistic in this materialistic world, for example. But
I think people feel likely to go and start to get a job because in something of the survival instinct that they have.
I'll explain that even more in my extension. But second question about stronger religion community. Firstly, we told you that religion community still exists on our side because there's sense of relatability. I understand that also happens on your side. People might have some like relatability also. But firstly, we can have a better effectivity in helping each other out, right? Why is it likely? Because firstly, they're now focusing on materialistic view. They're focusing on having better relationship with others. It means that when you actually have the money to now help other people, for example, donating to other churches, donating to other organizations, helping other people out because you now have the money. What is the comparison then in opposition side, right? You're not focusing on materialistic things. It is going to be hard for you to get those capital to begin with. What do they respond to you with? I think firstly, they only told you about human ego, but they never explained to you why is it only exclusive on our side. Why doesn't that happen on your side too? But I'll just respond to this by saying that if you're religious at the first place, when you choose to get into a community, you cannot be egoistic because you're the one choosing the community where you want to get into in your life then. But any more QI? But first extension then on the confusion. There are lots of sources that tells you religion is not real, right? There are atheists debunking your beliefs, telling you that monkey evolves into human, biology class stating how the universe is created, etc. This problem twofolds in opposition side. The moment people only focus on individual spirituality, this looks like believing maybe believing in only one God, praying every day, memorizing, for example, the whole Bible. This is bad exactly because there's no clear parameter to or a standard to know if you have reached or fulfilled the parameter itself, right? But secondly, the idea of teaching or like idea of God, for example, itself is way too abstract for a normal person to comprehend. Why so? I think firstly, people cannot measure how much you have prayed, right? You cannot measure. It is so hard for you to comprehend when there is no real quantity coming into play. But secondly, some teachings like the idea of afterlife itself is something that is so abstract that you cannot interpret that, right? You can look at a lot of religions who have different interpretation when people in the 1000 BC doesn't have the same interpretation of what you do now, right? And you do not even know how it looks like. What is the comparison here? I think it is very clear that firstly, when the world is materialistic and capitalistic, you'll always need to gain money, right? It means that you can measure the quantity, how much you have reached the fulfillment of like getting the money. And and this is very important because it also is in line with like your interest at the first place is to be fulfilled in your life. You want to get more money so that you can go to holidays, for example, go to vacation. But secondly, the religion's agenda from the first place is to fulfill happiness and material at the first place. Then that is the only way for you to be happy and materialistic at the same time is on our side, because only us like puts a parallel in getting money and getting fulfillment. On your side, the only way for you to get fulfillment is going to church every day, for example. But thirdly, I question how much you can help others when you do not have the money at the first place, because now you only lean to God, you only you rely on your religion to help you out. You just stay at home and not go outside and get productivity, for example, right? Because the religion itself doesn't incentivize you to do that. The people inside the religion say that, oh yeah, if you go outside and get work, for example, it's not as important as helping us here, like cleaning the church, for example. But fourthly, let's take our worst case scenario. Maybe you do not have money on our side. Okay, at least we still focus on ourselves, focusing on how to get more materialistic. So yeah, you just try to build your wealth relationship, and yeah, maybe you can pray later, right? So basically you help yourself first before you help other people. So yeah, also we still have community, so yeah, they can still help each other out. But fifthly, money and relationship, for example, is like the prerequisite for someone to be happy. We push it, and when you get it, it is going to be more fulfilling on our side. Well, we're proud to propose.
I thank the second for the fine speech. Now I welcome the second off-taker.
Sorry.
Wait. Trigger warning because we talk something religion things and we being recorded. Like yeah, doesn't mean to offend anyone. Just like for the purposes of the debate. Okay, start my speech in 3, 2, 1. They making religion such a business contract that just orientation or their orientation is just focusing on money. If it's true, what is the difference with the world right now? You killed your cases, by the way, for framing in this debate. Number one, they are play on uncharitable scenarios. They say that we missed the interpretation that exists in status quo. Two responses for this. Number one, under our side there is still churches, there is still pope, for example, that give you the right direction. For example, what kind of religion that you believe, for example, and how you're trying to read the religion, for example, and the Bible itself. It's better anyway. But even if it's true, and play on the worst scenario that you have a different interpretation, it's making you good, because those kind of, when you're praying, the moment that you're always praying together, for example, and praying to like yeah, continuity, for example, doing those kind of yeah, something like that, for example, and those kind of liturgy is making you more near with God, for example, and know what kind of the thing that God want to, for example, with you. And this is the important thing. That's why we read Bible, for example, every day, and we read renungan, for example, every day on yeah, on our daily life, for example. But secondly, that this debate is he says, she says, because the characterization is just focusing on those kind of material gains. But how the worldly endeavors looks like in the real life. Two things in here. Number one, meaning that you have the incentive and searching to just go and trying to go to the God, for example, and expecting that yeah, if I working, for example, and do my like daily life continue, for example, I get those kind of money, I can get those kind of successes, for example, because I go to the religion. Maybe I give to a lot of contribution toward the churches, but it's the purpose is just for like those kind of material gains, for example. It's not pure because you love your God, for example, and need those kind of spirituality comfortable. But second thing, then, even if it's true that you just want to get those kind of achievement and material things like what a proposition trying to portray to you, then what is the different and the unique thing, for example, within the religion and the things that exist in status quo? Because science already told you that you have to work every day, for example, or those kind of things still happen. It's meaning that under their side, they're making a generalization of those kind of religion. It's make less important because people thinking that this is just a same and a common religion that I already know, for example, this is a same with those kind of things, for example, under their side. But yeah, those kind of things. But thirdly, they play on extreme cases. Their harm can run if they can prove why those kind of people will likely to starving in the street. This is not the debate, right? With the two reasons. Number one, people and human characterization have the survival instinct. They still want to go working, for example, to get those kind of money, fulfill their needs and daily necessity, because those kind of thing, for example. But second thing, then, even if it's true, for example, that they have those kind of extreme thing, for example, on the our side, it is okay anyway. Trade off, we go to the heaven, for example. But thirdly, then, let's talk on the they're trying to say that you can help and try to like distribute those kind of money, for example, the thing that you get, for example, when you already get those kind of money. Three responses for this. Number one, I think this is too idealistic. You cannot buy those kind of things. But second thing is, even if it's true that you want to get those kind of things, I think the prerequisite for you to helping other people is this happen in opposition? Because exactly you know what the God want to, for example, for you, for example, because you're near with God, for example, and you have those kind of connection between you and God, for example. Because I know Jesus loved me, for example, and died on the cross, for example. That's why I'm helping other people using my money, for example, and capacity. I likely to throw those kind of benefits. Yes, POI.
Also since set up that it does not stop on materialistic that like okay you be successful then that stops there. It's about how you use this money to do other
Yeah,
stuff.
but if
It's
you
obviously different.
yeah, but if you're not praying together and you're not praying every day, for example, you just like working every day, for example, how does you know what kind of Bible taught you, for example, and what kind of like those kind of preaching, for example, inside of it? You don't know the value of the religion. Just throw out the argumentation. To close my speech, number one, let's talk about teachings and those kind of things, for example, and the follower. Secondly, talk about safety and happiness for the individual that concede and go to the religion, for example. First classes then, let's talk about the teachings and the follower itself. There's a three observation. Number one, let's talk about like, wow, the ideal thing, for example, there is another narrative, like an atheist, for example, and those kind of things. Two reasoning in here. Number one, no, I think religion is inherent already does in status quo. I think we already know Christianity since a past, for example, and those kind of things because those kind of like historically, for example, in the past. But secondly, even if it's true, in the very worst case, that there is other narrative, for example, that can compete with our religion. That's why on the our side, we're making and offer you something really unique, for example, and unique feeling and emotion when you go and co-op with your when you go and likely to connecting yourself, for example, with God. You get those kind of peace, for example, that is different with the scientific, for example, that forcing you to just like working every day and learning those kind of academic, for example, and go just debating, for example, but at least on the our side, you get those kind of internal peace, for example, on the our side. The second thing is, let's talk about the progressivity, because there are cases talk about like, right now world is progressive, capitalist, and dynamic. Three responses for this. Number one, no, religion always want to be consistent and absolutism. This is hip, this has happened when Hinduism and Buddhists, for example, try to teach you a same way, for example, of the preaching, for example, to in order for them try to maintain their kind of religion value, for example, in the status quo and making them more consistent, for example. But B, even if it's true, the right now world is very capitalist, for example, and we cannot conceive with that. I think there is a form of check and balances for you, for example. You still know that you go to churches just for like a weekdays, for example, and those kind of things, for example, when the Hari Sabbath, for example, moment and those kind of stuff, you still know about this, right? But the moment that you know these kind of things, the paradox that this happen on the our side because we're learning those kind of things, for example, and have those kind of connectivity with our God, for example. But thirdly, is that you lost the kind of value because those kind of capitalization, for example, and modernization. This has obviously happened. The moment when Greek, for example, for example, cannot like maintaining those kind of like the mythology, for example, because those kind of like capitalization and modernization, for example, that destroy their kind of value because they don't have any value, for example, that is near with us, for example, and those kind of community. But lastly, then, this is the biggest tipping point. They're trying to say that we have those kind of sense of commonality, for example, in the status quo. Three responses for this. Number one, no, Jesus still taught us that we have to making other people to be a disciple of Jesus, for example, or we still have likely to just loving each other, for example, like what Jesus told you, for example, in the past. It shows to you that those kind of community, it will still anyway, and this is anyway, for example, on the our side. The second thing is, even if it's true, I just want to take a trade-off as a way in here, because at least on the our side, even if it's true, in the very worst case, that you don't have any community, for example, I think at least your happiness and safe place are not contingent on those kind of commonality, because they have to play on scenario when they try to characterize that human have a limited capability. Exactly, your community never likely to have a 24-hour to always listening to your song, for example, and listening your venting, for example. They never always have money to go to like Kalimantan Timur, for example, and listening to your grievances, for example, if you have an online friend and those kind of stuff. It shows to you how they're trying to commonality is contingent on analysis that they have those kind of capital or not. But even if it's true, I think at least those kind of barrier is not happen on the our side, because you already like firm, for example, as an individual, for example, and have those kind of capability. What is doing on these clashes then? Two things in here. Number one, we have a better likelihood and possible to happen. We're not playing on extremely cases that people will starving because they cannot eat, but we play on the realistic way, how individual, for example, and capitalism, for example, in the status quo are never fulfilled and never make you satisfied, for example, as an individual, and never get those kind of eternal peace that what religion trying to tell you, for example. You feel peace, for example, even if your friend trying to discriminate you or etc. The second thing is, we trade off. This is the important thing. They never take a trade off anyway, right? They only play on the rainbow cases and cherry picking scenario. But under our side, we trade off. Even if we don't have any and as much quantity like what proposition trying to offer, we take it a bullet with a two analysis. Number one, the key of the religion is about their value, right? It is about like how you have those kind of value, for example, and people understand you better, for example, as a God. You know those kind of picturization of Jesus, for example. That's why I believe in Jesus and those kind of stuff. But the second thing is, even if we lost on the quantity, at least we have those kind of community, for example, that still gather together, for example, as a one individual, as a firm, for example, that know and understanding those kind of religion. This is good because the paradox is for you trying to preserving those kind of religion, it based on the deeper understanding, for example, to you, to those kind of religion. Under their side, just working every day, you don't know Jesus anyway. The second question then, let's talk about the happiness. The only thing that they say that, we feeling guilty, for example, in the status quo. Two responses for this. Number number one, I questioning this thing because like there's no analysis why feeling guilt is bad. Because we feeling guilty doing those kind of sinful action, we remorse and go to the church, for example, trying to do those kind of things, for example, and get the process to you to go to the salvation because you know that Jesus will likely to believe in you, for example, and like love to you, for example. But under their side, there is zero delta because people always feeling guilty anyway. They cannot go to the church, but they don't do those kind of things, for example. But second, exactly we caught this benefit because exactly when the moment that you have guilty, you want to go to church anyway. You want to listen the Pope thing, for example, and read Bible every day. Under their side, they never do this, for example, under their side because they are never feeling guilty. They're okay, for example, to working every day. That's why supporting religion, make Kalimantan Timur go to semifinals.
Thank the second off for the fine speech. Now I invite the third prof here.
All their benefits can only run if they can prove how individuals won't be confused when they focus on the internal spirituality, right? The burden in this debate is not to prove how people can be 100% successful, but what they can do with what they have in the current status quo, right? This debate is never about beauty standard, it's about the religion, right? But then let's rebut some of their cases. Firstly, they mention on how people will opt out and exit a religion when they don't get the things that they have prayed for, right? The problem I have with this is that there is a logical fallacy in this point. It's not as easy as you think for someone to simply opt out of a religion and change religion, especially if they have already believed in that certain religion for a certain long time. We don't see on how that is logical. But then secondly, we say on how focusing on internal spirituality does not mean that you can always be grateful every single time, every single second. We don't get the correlation, right? Even they mention on how just because you are religion does not inherently mean that you suddenly become an angel. They killed their own case. There's no fiat that people under their side also don't want any material gains. We say on how by proposing this motion we fit better with today's status quo in general. And then thirdly, at worst, even if they choose to change their religion, we say it's okay, right? People have the freedom of belief, and if it makes them happy, then so be it. We don't limit anyone to anything. So no, we don't undermine God's blessings. Don't only play in the worst case scenario, right? Instead, when we propose this motion, we can appreciate better on what the material gains that we have achieved in our life. We appreciate and even try to share it with our community. We say on how this benefit is exclusive on our side of the house. Then let's enter my first class regarding we must focus on worldly efforts in religious teachings because this acts as an accountable parameter of the religious teaching itself. When people focus on the internal spirituality, it's less likely for them to still have to use scriptures or doctrines because they feel like they can rely on their own internal spirituality. They don't need any other sources. They don't need to learn the religion. They can have their own beliefs. This leads to people interpreting their own beliefs in different ways. This is harmful because when people have the same religion but they have different interpretation, it becomes confusing for the religion believers. And each individuals, they want to prove that their own interpretation is the most correct one. We say that this don't only bring confusion, but it also creates a mess and chaos in the religious community. It can make people fight. It can create contradictions in between the beliefs and interpretations. But then let's compare to our side of the house. When we focus on the worldly efforts, we have a clearer parameter. We have better standards in the religious teachings, right? We encourage people to do tangible actions in the world, to do good things, donate to those who need it, and be good in general. And you don't always have to be ultra rich to be able to do this. You can just give what you have to the community, for example. And it's more important than internal spirituality because the scale of impact is going to be wider under our side. Not only do you benefit yourself, because you have peace by giving to others, but you also help others in general. In opposition's world, sure, at best they get internal spirituality and peace, but we say that this is not exclusive, because under our side we focus on the realistic actions, we focus on the tangible actions that they can do. For example, by donating, we don't only get the fulfillment and satisfaction by doing so, but we also give material benefits to other people. We say on how this is beneficial and exclusive under our side of the house. This is important because the goal of religion is to spread good teaching so the society can be a better place, not to be more individualistic. Yeah.
How you get those kind of satisfaction even when you never go to the churches and just go working, for example, in the status quo?
We don't get on how people under our side can't go to churches. Instead, we say under your side, people are less likely to go to church because they can have their own interpretations. They don't have any urgency to go to church in the first place. And I don't think that opposition side can achieve the goal of religion to spread good teachings to make society a better place, because instead people under their side become more individualistic. They become more close to accepting other point of views of the religion, right? So this nuance of better benefit is exclusive under our side of the house. Firstly, we cater to the individual. We give better fulfillment by knowing that they have better relationship with other people in their community. And our first speaker have also mentioned that they cannot get the maximized individual fulfillment because they don't know to which level their spirituality is. That leads to guilt, feeling that they're not doing enough every single day, and this comes at a trade-off with your time and energy. And not only that, you also become more isolated. The harms are on their side of the house. And I don't think that their side completely understands what we meant by individuals being more isolated. So let's clarify this point, right? Under opposition, we say that when they are more isolated, because they will be less incentivized to go to church, to open up their minds to the religious teachings, because they think that with internal efforts itself, they can already get salvation. They have no urgency to read the Bible at all. But then, for the religious community and society, this is going to be the second ones on this benefit. We say that when we focus on the worldly efforts, people have more incentive to help each other. This creates a domino effect in the community, that they help each other. We say on how this can manifest the goal of religions to make the world a better place, right? And it's untrue when they say that you can only get community when you are rich. We don't get where these points come from. So better environment in general exists on our side of the house. But then, yeah, moving on to the point of progressivity, worldly efforts is something that we must focus on in the current status quo, because the world is so dynamic. We say that this will fit better with our current world, and we are more realistic with today's world situation, right? So it's okay if people want to pursue material gains. We don't villainize them under our side of the house. But our case principle still stands when we say that we can also give back what we have to community, and under their side they have failed to yet engage with the benefit that they can give to the community, right? The best case under their side is that they have internal peace, but we say that their benefit can only be achieved if they can prove on how people don't get confused in the first place with their internal spirituality, right? They cannot achieve when they don't get the validation or anything to affirm their lives in the status quo. Under our side, we give better validation for people. If they want to gain material gains, we say that it's okay for them. And yeah, they also have the internal spirituality to tap back in as a check and balance under our side of the house. But then the trade-off in this debate comes to either you have uncertain internal values under their side, or you have the tangible parameter to manifest a better religion community under our side of the house, right? But then regarding the idea of happiness, I don't think that they can get this happiness when they go to church always because they feel guilty, right? People under their side won't be happy. You can benefit their livelihood if they go to church because of the guilt, not because they want to in the first place, but because they feel forced and they constantly feel like they're not doing enough to reach that internal spirituality level that they want to get to, right? So they also mention on how they want people to work, but then go to church. We don't see on how this is going to be able to happen under their side of the house for all these reasons proposed.
And the third prop for the fine speech. Now I will on third off here.
Okay, my preferences would be sure her. Yeah, trigger warning if I might say something because it's regarding to religions, might offend someone. It's only for the purpose of the debate. Propositions of the House stop playing under the money things. The fact that you are here in the quarterfinals is not only from the capital money, it's also from the pray from your mother or your friends. It proves on how religions is still better. I believe they are not charitable at all because they say as if under our side, people with internal spirituality will be a monk, will be a nun that will be confined inside a church or inside a place that they need to pray and read Bibles every time. No, I believe it's already engaged, but I will engage it further into my clashes. First, what is their biggest arguments here, panels? Humanity. As if under your side there will be humanity because right now people have money to charity and to donate. First, it's actually very contradicting and a utopic. See panels. They say that under their side there will be a capitalistic world where people strive for money, they need money to do this and that. But yet they say that the rich people could donate for the lower people, right? Do notice on how capitalism, selfishness will never align with kindness. So I believe it is very utopic under their side and they couldn't give us a better analysis about this. Because I believe under their side, if you have now deprioritizing your faith to God, which teach you for you to be kind, I believe they wouldn't listen to the religion to for them to actually give the money to charity because do notice on how rich people are very capitalistic and very egoistic, right? It means that they are failing on that case. Meanwhile, how under our side humanity will still exist and even better? First, I'm sorry, because first under our side people have their faith. People so with the faith because the religions always teach you a better things, right? So people want and even mandate to do good. They are forced to do good. They are mandate to charity and etc. Yes, I bite the bullet that maybe it's not that much as their side, but at least now they are mandate they will do it. But let's say that under our side people don't have money to actually do charity etc. What is exclusive under our side? First, prayers and mental support. This is the two things that never mentioned by the proposition of the House because I believe that mental supports and prayers is as important as the money because I believe that if you have the faith, you wouldn't lose your hope. That's why it is as important as their side. And why humanity is better under our side? Because under our side, we provide you inclusivity. Why? Notice on how the humanity case and charity side later. Charity case under their side is relying on the money, on the capitalistic, and on a lot of capitals. But how about the people that doesn't have the money but they are willing to charity? Does it mean that they cannot do this? But what is exclusive under our side? The inclusivity. Why? Because right now, at least the supports and the helps that have access on our side could be very inclusive. It's accessible through prayers or maybe you just mentally support them. Wouldn't you be so hopeless if your coach wouldn't say good luck for you? So moving on to my class. Oh yeah, Pio Idol.
Core value of religion of goodness is obviously still the great into narrative and proposition. So exactly because the world is capitalistic, you try to balance your greed of getting wealth with doing good thing.
But I believe under your side because right now you are deprioritizing the internal spiritually, which what your faith and what is the reason for you to obey your religions and to hear your religions. I believe that it wouldn't exist under your side. Moving on to my clash. First, you said about happiness. I'm gonna prove you why happiness under our side is more certain. How? Because you said the parameter of happy. I believe that the parameter of happiness is very wide, right? But what can prove you the happiness is gratefulness, which is this is not exclusive under our side. Why is it exclusive? First, you have the spiritually close with your religions, which directly teach you about gratefulness. Second, under your side, you will always strive for the worldly endeavors. You will always strive for money, strive for capitalistic, and it will never be enough. The fact that you have 1,000 and then later you will want 5,000, it proves that how grateful would exist under your side. So it proves that how happiness wouldn't exist under your side. The fact that actually the DPM said that under your side you will always strive for money and capitalistic. It proves that under your side you will always be greedy and strive for everything in the worldly endeavors. Second, fulfillment. How fulfillment is exclusively happen under our side? First, materialistic endeavors is a human nature. I believe it's already proved. So two things. So why we could still fulfill our our materialistic endeavors because they need to provide for their life. It wouldn't like they would just let them starving because they want to pray, right? It's just not logical under your side. So so I believe that there is no urgency for that to be gotten through religions because the materialistic endeavors could be gotten from everywhere, even your own instincts. I believe that there is no urgency for you to get it through religions. So why fulfillment under our side is better? First, spiritual fulfillment could only and exclusively gotten through religions, which right now they cut the access through the spiritual religions, spiritual fulfillment, because under your side you are prioritizing the materialistic fulfillment. So I believe it's not important and it's not urgent for us to actually prioritize that and in religions itself. And in opposite side of the house, in opposite side of the house, spiritual fulfillment wouldn't exist. How? Because now your only source of it become realistic. The fact that you make the religions become very realistic itself. So I believe that. It's would hard. You said that it's hard to get a spiritual level to achieve because there is an abstract parameter, right? First, no, there is a parameter. I believe the parameter here is the individual parameter of how you think you are close to God. And I'm going to prove you it later. And secondly, I believe it's symmetrical because I believe the materialistic endeavors doesn't have its own parameter, it's right? So I believe under your side, you will only try for it and there's no parameter of you to be in a cap of enough. Why the abstract parameter is good under our side? Because first, the closer you are to God, the better person you are, right? Which I believe that religion's teaching is very good. And why wouldn't it be harmful under our side? First, spiritual level couldn't be competed. How? Because people wouldn't say like, I'm closer to God and you're not close to God. Because there is no parameter. It's your connections to God. No one knows about it. And it means there is no comparisons. There is no pressure to be better than others to try for your connections to God. Why under your side is bad? Because right now, the parameter of it's become real, exact. It's not abstract. It means it could be a point of comparison for you with your others. So you will likely to strive more. You will pressure to do more in order to exist and matter in the society. Because right now, everything is very obvious and you can see everything. And then what is our worst case? They said that under our side, there is no productivity. I believe that we understand on how productivity is also exists under our side because you have the basic necessities that you need to fulfill. And yes, even if the productivity is not that much as your side, I believe that it is just okay because at least under our side you can fulfill yourself. And too much productivity is not good. Why? Because the trade-off of your productivity that you set and the progressivity is under your side is first your time with your family, etc. It means that you will likely to close your time with your families. And then second, even if you want to trade it with the people spirituals, I believe it's not a good trade-off because right now you don't have the safety place, which I believe when you're alone, your own safety place is your God, and the only way for you to achieve it is from internal spiritually. So I believe that it is very wrong for you to say that under our side there is no productivity, because do notice on how under our side you wouldn't be confined as you're a monk or you're a nun that you need to pray every day. But what we are emphasizing here is how you would likely to go and to be better, to have a better relationship with God through prayers or through readings and everything, as long as you feel that it could fulfill your spiritual necessities. That's why give the win to Kaltim. Thank you.
And the third op for the fun speech goes on all side and invite all to reply. Here.
Three strategical flaws that making Kepri to lose this debate. Number one, their cases can operate, their benefit can run. It's true, but it's contingent, and the prerequisite it's based on analysis that if you work, you will get money. Those kind of analysis, right? Because in order for you to helping people, you should have money and those kind of things. This is something that is inaccessible under their side because they never explain to you those kind of prerequisites under their side. But the thing that I get to you in here, that thing is under our side, every type of individual, like what Joy already told you, regardless you are beauty or not, regardless you you don't have any money or not, you still can accessing those kind of eternal peace, for example, because God not see you, for example, how much you helping people, but how much you are loyal to God, for example, and loving your God. Their cases can run. And so far, they prove to you why under our side, people are starving, die, and cannot do and pray to God. This is the extreme cases that what proposition trying to offer. But under our side, we already challenge this by saying that people have a human necessity, people have those kind of survival instinct, they will go to work anyway, it's not exclusive. But secondly then, notice how all the benefit that proposition offer is actually not exclusive with the two analysis. Number one, talk about money, I already explained this. But secondly then, if you talk about like those kind of rich, for example, those kind of like you can helping and donating people, those kind of self-fulfillment because you helping other people is not exclusive because it's contingent on you can helping people or not. But under our side, it's more certain the benefit because regardless you helping people or not, Jesus still love you, for example, regardless of all the sinful action that you have and get those kind of process of salvation. But lastly, they are not contributive, obviously, because they're just repeating like all the cases that they're trying to say is not strategic at all. Two questions to point out why Call Team should go to semifinal. Number one, notice how on the principle level, their principle is contingent on practical anyway. Because like their principle, it's based on like, yeah, you can helping people or not, right? Because their own principle is just like, oh, I want to donate to people and etc. But the thing is how I give you the weighing in here. Three analysis. Number one, all the prerequisite for you to in order for helping people and in order for you to do what God said to you, it's basically on your individual first as a self-fulfillment and you understand your condition more. This is the important prerequisite because they never answer this until they're whipped even because they never explain to you why people that just working every day 9 to 5 for example every day can suddenly understand the whole Bible, for example, what Jesus is trying to tell to you and those kind of things. This is something that I already challenged, but they never respond to this. They just say that capitalistic, yeah, we need those kind of money and yada yada yada. But secondly then, even if it's true, how they're trying to respond to this by saying that there's a confusion because you don't know, because you have a different interpretation with the people around you, for example. How do we respond to this? With a two analysis. Number one, we explain how religion not standing by your individual itself. There is still a pope, there's still churches, for example, that told you what is the right direction that you have to go. But second thing is, even if it's true, I flip and cop this benefit actually by saying that we can have a more deeper understanding. Because right now you can asking the churches, for example, oh, I have this kind of interpretation, why I have this different, for example, with my friend and those kind of things. This is something that I already explained to you. Those kind of a deeper understanding about God, for example, what God wants you to actually do, for example, in this world. This is the most important matter because all the religion things, for example, that exist in status quo want you to have those kind of quality of your internality, for example, and have those kind of value, for example, to be happen in the under their side. The second thing is our principle. It's not standing on depending and contingent on the practicalities. Even if all the practical argumentation destroy in this debate, we are the one that can told you how the principle of the religion want to get those kind of value, for example, and have those kind of value and understanding with your God. This is important though. Secondly, let's talk about the practical things. They say that there's a confusing interpretation, there's a capitalistic world, and those kind of atheist narrative, for example. How do I give the way in here? Four things in here. Number one, our benefit is exclusive because their benefit about like those kind of capitalists is not exclusive. You can still working, you still can donate to people because Jesus told you that you love me. Jesus told you that you love other people and etc. You have to making other people as a disciple and those kind of stuff. But the thing that is exclusive, our happiness, our safe place, and our spirituality fulfillment is not contingent on analysis that community is always around you or not. This is something that I already explained. There is a lot of barrier, time, money, and those kind of things. Even they agree that the capitalistic forcing you to always working. It shows how commonality benefit is not important at all to paint in this debate. But second thing is, the thing is, it's significant and accessible and inclusive. We save those kind of poor people that cannot donating to their people. At least they deserve to get those kind of fulfillment, for example, under our side. That's why Kalimantan Timur should go to grand final.
I thank all for applying for the fine speech. Those of God's side, I invite love to apply. Here.
The biggest push from opposition is that world deeds are inaccessible because you might fail, beauty standard, which I don't even know the correlation with emotion is, you cannot contribute in proposition if you're poor. We told you two things that took this down even before my response to speaker spoke because I already preempted it since P1. No, donating does not only revolve around who can donate more money because if I'm poor, I can still maybe buy newspaper from an old granny which is just 2,000 rupiah. If you're really that poor, then you can probably do things with your energy, maybe helping people build a church, helping people build a mosque. I don't know know why it's only related to money. Secondly, notice that our burden was never to prove why people can be so rich like Elon Musk or whoever it is, because it is not a competition about who can gain more money, who can be more rich. It is about how you utilize the money to maximize other people's happiness. If you don't believe in this, just read the motion. It is also about relationship with other. It's not only simply about money and all those things. It's also about relationship with other. You help them, you help me. Obviously, there's different with status quo. I don't know why they say there's no difference. But on the same topic, then on accessibility, we also challenge side opposition by saying three things. A, you're busy hustling. You're busy doing a lot of things, which is also agreed by opposition, because they also concede the idea about capitalism, which means you're most likely not going to have that much time to think about God. But then secondly, there are other people that have different perspective on God existence. Lastly, internally speaking, it is also much easier for you to doubt your God if you think that God has failed you. Maybe they don't answer your prayer. If you don't, maybe Lola's NSDC or something. I think these are more believable. But even if we don't talk about this on accessibility, I think the idea, accessibility is actually kind of symmetrical. Why do we still win? Firstly, both sides agrees that the world is capitalistic. It is about how you feel more fulfilled in this capitalistic world. So before even explaining what we brought to you, there's already a huge tension in opposition case. Because if the world will require you to work and hustle anyway, then even in proposition worst case scenario, if it is true that we'll only get money and not donate to anyone, at least we feel that it's something noble, at least we feel fulfilled doing it, at least we think that the religion thinks that, oh, that's good. So at least on individual fulfillment, we still win. But other than that, what have we brought to you? First is that people are confused on their side of the house. They want to prioritize one thing, but they have clashing interests. But then secondly, people do it with guilt. Because if it is true that as opposition say, that you will still work in their side of the house, then when you go to church, for example, you think it's bad because I took a leave, I let other people do my work. If you stay at work instead, you feel bad because you don't have the time to talk to your God, for example. They cannot simply say that guilt is unimportant because you can then go to church to get closure, for example. But again, we tell you that there's just a loop right there, yeah? Like, for example, you get guilt, you go to church, after you go to church, you go to work, and then you get guilty again. Yeah, you just keep repeating it. But the second thing on communities, it seems like they also want to copy the benefit on community, but we told you since P1 that this is not possible because A, you lose the incentive to do so because you can do it by yourself anyway, especially when they bring the example of Bible. If Bible is that accessible, then they can just read it at their home. Why would they even go to church and ask for people's opinion, for example? Secondly, notice that the motion requires opposition to specifically define internal spirituality. So intuitively, you won't even search for community anyway. You only focus on internal spirituality. So if they fail to co-opt the benefit on community, which was also a large part of their speeches, then the harm they need to concede is, first, you have loss of support in their side of the house. Secondly, there's no validation on their side of the house. And then lastly, there's also no assurance in time where you fail. You cannot defend people in the very worst case. But lastly, I'll just spend a little while on this because I think it's pretty easily proven. We never say in proposition, we never say that people in opposition can only stay at home and don't go to work every single hour. Don't strawman us. What we said on P1 is that you feel guilty, you feel confused. In opposition, you don't feel happy doing anything. It's not that we force people to stay at home. I don't know why is that suddenly our case. Secondly, I just want to quote O3 themselves. They can see that you cannot compare spiritual level because no one knows your level. But exactly, right? You don't even know your own level because exactly that's what we mean when the idea of spiritual level is so abstract, the idea of it is so blurry. You might not even feel assured after memorizing the entire Bible. You might not even be assured after you go to church every single day because you don't know how far you have done, how far other people are doing it. Am I actually reaching the right level or not? Lastly, again, we can still help people feel happy even without giving money. For example, if Cal team can let us take the win, I'll be one happy guy. For all those reasons, propose.
I thank government reply. Congratulations for finishing quarterfinals. Yeah, you guys can cross wedges, but if you guys want to talk, you can do it outside, as the room will be used for deliberations, for observers, exit the room.
Thank you. Good debate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was good.
Thank you.
Thank you. You were so